Good morning. I am Tanya Lynn, and welcome to today's Feminine Leadership Activation Call. And it was difficult for me to figure out what I really wanted to talk about today because there were a couple different topics that were coming up for me. And so I had to look at what was really alive in the collective space within sistership and within my own life last week. And that was the word that came up was commitment. And commitment has always been a really big word for me. Just really honoring my agreements and being really committed to my path of truth, of showing up as a leader. And I feel like this is a really good topic for feminine leadership. And there was a lot of triggers coming up, a lot of women who weren't fully showing up to our circles last week. And so I thought, oh, let's dive into that. And a new word emerged from commitment, and that is devotion. So we're going to talk about both commitment and devotion. And so let's close our eyes for a moment and feel your seat. Feel the ground underneath your feet. And let's take a deep inhale and exhale. Let's feel into these words: commitment, devotion, commitment to myself, commitment to my highest good, commitment to my relationships, commitment to my purpose, commitment to my word. And devotion, spiritual devotion. What comes up? Is there anything that you feel in your body as you feel either one of these words? And we're going to explore them with the help of the goddess Pavarti, the Hindu goddess of love and devotion. We call in her energy, and we ask the mountains, the forest, to support us in connecting with our commitments. Opening your eyes. The number one thing that I hear from women when they are looking at joining Sistership Circle is, I don't know if I can fully commit. I don't know if I can show up fully for the commitment. And I'm always looking at this because it comes up so often. And when I look at our society, all I see is broken commitments, divorces. 50% of people get divorced. People not following through. And this to me is really related to integrity, being our word, keeping and honoring our commitments. And this can be a really confusing subject when we're talking about masculine and feminine, because commitment feels very masculine, right? It feels almost militant and a lot of takes a lot of discipline to honor your commitments. And in the spiritual communities, it's like, oh, I need to be in the flow and I need to kind of go with where the wind takes me. And that feels very airy, not very grounded. And so a lot of people are considered to be flakes in the spiritual communities because they're just more about being in the flow, and not being very tied. It feels very tied down to being commitments. And so there's, having multiple lovers and not really wanting to be in a relationship with one person. And then there's like, well, I do want that. And so there's just a lot of confusion and a lot of, I would say fear of what would it look like if I fully stuck with my commitments. And so I wanted to bring in this new word, devotion, because, if we're talking about being spiritual and being in the flow, and devotion is a very spiritual word. So let's just look at these words for a second. Commitment is a promise to do or give something, a promise to be loyal to someone or something, the attitude of someone who works very hard to do or support something. That word loyal immediately brings up betrayal. And I think a lot of times when we are afraid to commit, we've been betrayed. We've given our love. We have committed to our parents who have betrayed us, to a friend who didn't show up for us. And so there's been many times when we were fully committed as a little kid and it wasn't reciprocated. And so there's like this, well, screw it, I'm not going to show up, like I'm not going to jump into the deep end. I'm not going to jump off the cliff and be fully all in the ring if you're not going to be in there with me, right? How many times does that show up in your life where you've been fully committed and someone didn't meet you there? And so you had this attitude of, I'm not going to get hurt again. Commitment equals hurt. Commitment equals betrayal, not loyalty. I don't have people who are loyal to me. So that might be one flavor of it. And then there's this other flavor of, well, if I fully commit and then I can't honor my commitment, then I'm going to be left with a lot of guilt that I didn't fully show up. And so it's like two sides of the same coin, right? Of, if I'm not able to fully honor my commitment, what are people going to think of me? I can't let people down. So it's much easier for me to not be committed, to not be all in, and then I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about letting people down. I want to read you this quote that I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite quotes about commitment. And so the thing with commitment is that when we commit, that's when our dreams become reality. That's when we are able to create something and create what we really want. So if we're wondering why things aren't showing up for us, it's because we're not fully showing up in the ring, fully committed. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there's one elementary truth that the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidences. Meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. So when we make that commitment to our purpose, when we fully step into the ring, then the universe is going to respond to that. What that actually might look like is obstacles. And that is to not only test your commitment, but to give you opportunities for growth and expansion and healing. So I don't always look at obstacles as a bad thing. It's like, oh, so I just committed. All of where I'm not committed is going to show up so that I can heal and transform all of that and be solid in my commitment. So it's always an opportunity when the shit hits the fan to see all those areas where you're not in fully alignment with the commitment, and it's kind of like stacking everything up so that I can be fully in integrity and be inside my commitment. So the other thing that comes up is, well, I am committed and I got sick. I didn't get childcare. I have this other opportunity that came up, right? And this comes up a lot during circle of reasons why women don't fully show up. And then there's this, well, I'm honoring myself, right? Like I'm honoring what I need, right? I'm sick. I need to stay in bed. My body hurts. I have the chills. I have, I'm achy. I have a migraine. That one comes up a lot. That one actually came up for me. And so I need to show up for myself, right? I need to commit to me, not the group. And so I always pose the question, well, what if the group is you? What if by actually showing up inside of the circle that you are fully committing to yourself? And what if that is the opportunity to look at what the physical manifestations coming up? So whether that's the migraine or the chills or the cough, the sore throat, what if by showing up in the circle, you can go underneath the physical symptom and get to the root cause, the emotional, by talking about it, by being in process with the group? Because whatever's on the surface is actually coming from a deeper root inside of yourself. And that the circle, when we have a commitment to a group, the circle is us. The circle actually doesn't exist without me. Because if we are all mirrors and we all don't show up, then there is no circle, right? So it's absolutely important that we all honor that we are all spokes on the wheel and that we all show up, no matter how we're feeling. And this can, again, sound very militant, very harsh, and very disciplinarian. But we are moving to a new paradigm. We're moving to a paradigm of collaboration, of co-creation. And it's not so much about the individual. We're moving towards oneness, not separation. And so we have to work these pieces out of how do I fully honor myself inside of the group, inside of the collective? How do I hold both of these? Well, if I can find myself as the individual spoke on the wheel, inside the wheel, and I can see how I am connected to all of it, and I can see the oneness, and I can see that there really truly is no separation, that's where I can find my power. I can rest inside of the collective versus trying to muscle it on my own. So the self-care actually becomes care by community. And I had a very powerful experience with this right after my birth of, I can't actually show up for myself right now. I can't take care of myself right now. I need the community to support me. And I can find myself inside of the collective. But this is such a new paradigm that it's hard for us to get, because as soon as we get sick, we feel like we need to withdraw. And yes, there is a time to withdraw into the cave and to lick one's own wounds and to go through an internal process. But not at the time when we said that we're going to show up, because there's a reason why the universe provided us that space, why the universe gave us circle. And I'm just using circle as an example. This can be anything. This can be inside your relationship. This can be inside of some other kind of commitment that you made. There's a reason why you made that commitment, and that this obstacle and this physical symptom is coming up right here, right now, for you to deal with inside of your commitment. Let's look at devotion now. because I think that this can give us a whole new way of looking at commitment. Devotion is a feeling of strong love or loyalty, the quality of being devoted. Love and loyalty, again, that commitment, loyalty. Devotion, the use of time, money, and energy for a particular purpose. And then devotions, prayer, worship, or other religious activities that are done in private rather than in a religious service. So I've never had a religion that I've been devoted to. But I look at Circle as my church. I look at my yoga practice as my church. And I am very spiritual, just not religious. So I've had a new understanding of this word devotion, of fully showing up for truth. I am devoted to truth. Not necessarily my truth. And there's confusion of like, well, what is truth? This is my truth in the moment. My truth in the moment is that my body is hurting. I'm sick, right? I have flu-like symptoms. That might be my truth, but the truth is never what actually it seems perhaps on the surface, because that's part of the illusion. The truth is underneath of what's actually causing these physical symptoms. And I've really learned to discover truth in my Vipassana meditation. So I have a devotion to that particular meditation when I go for 10 days of silence every year. And I do that so that I can practice being in this devotion and being inside of my commitment. And to have this strong love for myself come out of that, because I get to be in silence and stillness, and I get to feel all of these physical sensations come up, and I get to observe them for the truth of what they are. And the truth is that they will pass, they're impermanent, and that there's something on the subatomical level that's causing these sensations, and that my reaction to them is not necessarily the truth. The truth is that I can actually just observe them and be. So I can just be and observe, and there's, it's there's nothing wrong. Like I don't need to react, and that's the truth. And so I can continue to show up and just observe the sensations in my body versus contracting into them. So devotion, it's like, can I have that strong love for truth and for myself and for my highest good, which sometimes might not be what I think it is. And that sometimes what I think is the truth is actually illusion. And that's all the fear. So whenever I'm in fear, that's the illusion. Can I bring my devotion back to love? And can I stand in my commitment no matter what obstacle comes up, because that's all illusion. So Pavarti is the Hindu goddess, and she is the goddess of love and devotion. And so let's look at her for a second, because she's expressed in many roles, many moods, many aspects. Sometimes she turns into Kali, sometimes she turns into another goddess, and she's an active agent of the universe, the power of Shiva, who she is actually married to. She is expressed in nurturing and benevolent aspects as well as destructive and ferocious aspects. She is the voice of encouragement, reason, freedom, and strength, as well as of resistance, power, action, and justice. So this paradox symbolizes her willingness to realign to reality and adapt to needs of circumstances in her role as the universal mother. She identifies and destroys evil to protect Durga, as well as creates food in abundance to nourish Annapurna. So in one of the myths, she resolves that she's going to marry Shiva, and her parents discourage her because they don't really want her to marry this god, but she goes for it. And so she approaches the god Kama, and he is the Hindu god of desire, erotic love, attraction, and affection, and asks for Kama's help. And Kama says, okay, well, I'm going to shoot Shiva with the arrow of desire. And so his third eye is opened, and he burns the Cupid Kama to ashes. She still does not give up, so she moves to the mountains and engages in a lot of his activities like yoga and tapas. And so all of a sudden he's really interested because he sees her devotion to the spiritual path. And he meets her in disguised form, telling her, you shouldn't do this, and that Shiva's weak. Remember, he's disguised, but she is still determined. She's still devoted. She's still on her spiritual path, and so he really likes that. And eventually, they get married, and so they, they continue to live in the mountains, and they have the sons Ganesha, who's the remover of obstacles, and Kartikeya. And Kartikeya is the leader of the celestial armies. So she gives birth to powerful sons. So there's a couple different things here. Is she never gives up. And she is really determined, number one, to marry this god, and number two, to practice in her devotion to the spiritual path. But the key there is that she never gives up. She's swayed by her parents, so it goes against what her family's telling her. How many times does that come up, right? Where we don't have our parents' approval, we don't have our family's approval. Do we give in to that obstacle, or do we continue to go with what we are desiring, what we are committed to? Just all these things happen, and she's up in the mountains, and yet she never gives up. And that's the key here, is that when we commit, there's going to always come up different circumstances and obstacles. And who are you in the face of all that? As a feminine leader, do you continue to honor your commitment? Do you stay devoted to the path that you set yourself out on? Or do you fall by the wayside? And so Pavarti, in her ability to transmute and to transform and to just play all these different roles and turn into different goddesses and be the universal mother, she stays committed and devoted. So when I am struggling to honor my commitment, can I rest in my devotion to my highest good and my healing, my devotion to truth, my devotion to love over fear? And that is what drives me. That is the fire that keeps me showing up when I don't want to show up. Last week, I didn't want to show up at Circle. I did not feel good. I was exhausted right beforehand, and I was like, oh, I don't want to show up, but I am. because there's something pulling me. There's something bigger than myself here at stake. And I'm going to show up for my sisters. I'm going to show up in the circle because there's medicine for what I'm experiencing. Ganesha is sitting in circle. Ganesha will remove my obstacles by me showing up, by me honoring that commitment. And so when we have devotion, when we think about spirituality, there's a faith. There's a faith in something bigger than ourselves at work. And we can't always understand it. Faith is blind. We don't always know what's there. But we continue to have faith. We continue to have devotion to this path when we don't always understand it. And we trust that these obstacles will be removed, that something will reveal itself, that the circumstances are impermanent. And while it may feel like I'm always going to feel this, it's not. It's going to shift. And a lot of times it will shift when we just show up inside of our commitment. So next, in our next call, we're going to talk about Agni, which is the fire in your belly. And that element of fire. And particularly, we're going to dive into Kali, who has a lot of fire, in my opinion, and this stoking the fire to keep showing up. Because a lot of times when we're feeling resistance, we then feel like mud and we feel really heavy and we lose the fire. It kind of goes out. It feels dark. How do we restoke and refuel that fire that allows us to take the actions? In summertime, summertime is coming up, and there's a lot of fire element in summer. And it's that time of determination and action. This is what we call in during our 4 directions of circle. And so we're gonna really look at the fire and how to keep your fire stoked. Because I would say, when we are feminine leaders, we have to hold both the surrender and the softness, as well as the fire and the determination. Feminine leaders take action. We don't just dream. We don't just talk. We walk. We walk the walk. So all the other recordings for these calls are at sistershipcircle.com/activation-calls. And you can find all the different recordings, and we will see you next week, Thursday at 9 a.m.